Montana Territory, 1872. The winter had been harsh, unforgiving as the land itself, but spring finally breathed life back into the valley. Samuel Porter adjusted his hat as he surveyed the endless prairie stretching before him. At 25, he'd already learned what most men twice his age knew, that the frontier was a place for survival, not sentiment. Love was a luxury that got men killed out here. Better to ride alone, trust your horse, and keep your gun close. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rolling landscape as Sam rode toward Virginia City. His lean frame sat easy in the saddle, years of ranch work evident in his broad shoulders and strong hands. A light stubble dusted his square jaw, and his eyes, blue as Montana sky, missed nothing as he scanned the horizon. Handsome by any measure, Sam had caught the eye of many a young woman in town, but he kept his distance. Entanglements meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant weakness. "Come on, Buck," he murmured to his chestnut gelding. "Let's get to town before noon." Virginia City had grown since Sam first arrived 3 years ago, fleeing memories of the war and a family tragedy he preferred not to revisit. The settlement now boasted proper streets, a dozen saloons, and enough people to make a man uncomfortable if he valued his solitude, which Sam did fiercely. He hitched Buck outside the general store and adjusted his holster, a habit more than necessity in daylight. Inside, the familiar scents of coffee, leather, and tobacco greeted him. Mrs. Holloway, the owner's wife, smiled as he entered. "Samuel Porter, twice in 1 month, we're honored," she teased. Sam tipped his hat. "Just need supplies, ma'am. Ranch won't run itself. You ever consider getting some help out there? Young man like you shouldn't be alone all the time." "Alone suits me fine," he replied, his tone closing the subject. As he gathered his provisions, coffee, flour, ammunition, the door swung open, bringing a blast of spring air and the town's Presbyterian minister, Reverend Clark. "Samuel, Providence indeed. I was hoping to find you." Sam nodded respectfully. "Reverend. I have a situation requiring a man of your capabilities." The older man lowered his voice. "The stagecoach arrives tomorrow with a young woman, Miss Eliza Turner. 20 years old, she's coming to live with her uncle, but he's taken ill and can't make the journey to collect her." "And this concerns me how?" Sam asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. "She'll need escort to the Carson homestead. It's a day's ride, as you know." "Hire someone else, I've got cattle to mind." The Reverend's expression hardened slightly. "Her passage was paid by charity, Samuel. She's had difficulties. Lost her parents in a fire back east, no family except old Carson." "That's unfortunate, but—" 3 days' work, fair pay, Carson authorized it. The minister pressed a folded paper into Sam's hand. "She arrives noon tomorrow. I'd consider it a personal favor." Before Sam could refuse again, Mrs. Holloway chimed in. "Oh, you must help the poor girl, Samuel. Imagine arriving alone in a strange place." Trapped by politeness and the women now watching from across the store, Sam reluctantly nodded. "Fine, I'll bring her to Carson's, that's all." That night, as Sam sat on his cabin's porch watching darkness settle over his modest ranch, he cursed his decision. Escorting some eastern city girl across rough country was exactly the kind of complication he avoided. She'd complain about the dust, the heat, the horses. They always did. Then again, 3 days and he'd be rid of her, back to his peaceful solitude. The next day found Sam waiting at the stagecoach station, increasingly irritated as the noon coach arrived nearly 2 hours late. Dust billowed as the driver finally brought the team to a halt. "Sorry 'bout the delay, Porter," the driver called down. "Wheel trouble near Devil's Gulch." Sam grunted acknowledgement, watching as passengers descended. A businessman, a peddler, an elderly couple, and finally, a slender young woman in a modest blue traveling dress that had seen better days. She carried only a small carpetbag and stood uncertainly as the others claimed luggage and dispersed. "Miss Turner," Sam approached, hat in hand. She turned, and something in Sam's chest tightened unexpectedly. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, too thin, with a solemn expression, but her eyes caught him off guard. Large, amber-flecked, and holding a quiet intensity that suggested she'd seen more hardship than her 20 years warranted. Her light brown hair was pulled back simply, a few strands escaping around a face both delicate and somehow determined. Yes, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Are you from my uncle? Samuel Porter. I'm to take you to Carson's place. She studied him briefly. You're very young to be sent on such an errand. The observation, delivered without coquettishness, caught him off guard. I'm 25, ma'am. Old enough to know the territory. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I meant no offense, Mr. Porter. I'm grateful for the escort. Sam cleared his throat. We should start now. It's a day's ride to your uncle's homestead. We'll camp tonight, arrive tomorrow. He expected protest at the news of camping, but Eliza merely nodded. Very well, I'm ready whenever you are. As Sam led her to where Buck and a rented mare waited, he noticed how the townspeople watched, some with curiosity, others with undisguised pity. He caught fragments of whispered conversation. Poor thing, tragedy back east, not likely to find a husband after. Whatever her story was, it had preceded her. Virginia City had already decided this young woman's fate before she'd spent an hour in town. Sam helped her mount, noting how light she was, how she avoided his gaze as the whispers followed them down the street. Town's full of gossips, he said gruffly as they rode past the last buildings. Best ignore them. Eliza straightened in her saddle. I'm well accustomed to being talked about, Mr. Porter. They rode in silence for several miles, the spring landscape unfolding around them. Sam kept a steady pace, occasionally glancing back to ensure his companion wasn't struggling. To his surprise, she rode well, sitting the saddle with the ease of someone familiar with horses. You've ridden before, he observed when they stopped to water the horses at a creek. Eliza stroked her mare's neck. My father bred horses in Pennsylvania before we lost everything. Sam wanted to ask more but sensed her reluctance. Instead, he offered her jerky from his provisions. She accepted with thanks, eating without complaint about the tough, salty meat. As afternoon stretched toward evening, storm clouds gathered in the west. Sam frowned at the darkening horizon. We'll make camp early, he decided. There's a sheltered spot by Copper Creek. We can reach it before the rain hits. Eliza nodded, following his lead as he turned off the main trail. They reached the campsite, a small clearing protected by cottonwoods, just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Sam worked quickly, erecting a small canvas shelter and building a fire before the wood could get soaked. You can take the shelter, he told her. I'll sleep by the fire. That seems unnecessary. The shelter appears large enough for both of us. At his startled look, she added, unless propriety concerns you more than practicality, Mr. Porter. It's not proper, he said stiffly. Neither is pneumonia, she countered, but I won't insist. The rain intensified, becoming a steady downpour that threatened to extinguish their small fire despite Sam's efforts. Eventually, soaked through, he conceded defeat and joined Eliza under the canvas. They sat awkwardly, a careful distance between them, listening to the rain drum against the shelter. Thank you, Eliza said quietly, for bringing me to my uncle. It's a job, Sam replied. Even so, I understand it's an imposition. She wrapped her arms around her knees. May I ask how much my uncle is paying you? Enough. Does it matter? I suppose not. I don't wish to be a burden to anyone. Something in her voice made Sam glance over. In the dim light, her profile seemed fragile yet somehow resolute. For the first time, he wondered what circumstances had brought this young woman across the country to a relative she presumably barely knew. Your uncle has a decent place, he offered. Small cattle operation, good water. You'll be comfortable enough. She nodded. I've never met him. He's my mother's brother. They weren't close. Why come all this way, then? Eliza was silent for a long moment. What options does a penniless orphan have, Mr. Porter? Especially one with my history. Before he could ask what she meant, she continued. You needn't fear I'll gossip about our improper arrangement. I lost my reputation long ago through no action of my own. Sharing a shelter with a cowboy hardly matters now. The bitter edge to her words silenced any response Sam might have made. Instead, he added wood to their small fire at the shelter's entrance and offered her more jerky and hardtack. They ate in silence as darkness fell completely, the rain eventually tapering to a gentle patter. Get some sleep, Sam finally said. We'll start early. Eliza nodded, curling up in her traveling cloak. Soon her breathing deepened into sleep, leaving Sam awake with unsettling thoughts. He'd expected a pampered Eastern girl, but Eliza Turner defied categorization. Her quiet dignity in the face of the town's whispers, her pragmatic approach to their journey, these weren't traits he associated with city women. Moreover, something about her story nagged at him. What history could a 20-year-old woman have that would follow her across a continent? Morning broke clear and cool. Sam woke to find Eliza already up, her hair neatly rebraided, washing her face in the creek. She'd managed this without waking him, a feat few could accomplish given his habitually light sleep. "Good morning, Mr. Porter," she greeted him, her expression composed. "Sam," he corrected, surprising himself. "If we're traveling together, might as well use my given name." "Then I'm Eliza," she offered, a small smile that transformed her solemn face, making Sam suddenly aware of how young she truly was. They made good time that day, the trail dry despite the night's rain. Sam found himself occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing brief stories about the territory. Eliza listened attentively, asking intelligent questions that revealed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. By mid-afternoon, they crested a ridge offering views across the valley. In the distance, a small homestead was visible, a cabin, barn, and corrals nestled against a backdrop of pine forest. "Your uncle's place," Sam indicated, "will be there within 2 hours." Eliza reined her horse to a stop, studying the distant homestead with an unreadable expression. "It looks peaceful. Carson keeps to himself mostly, decent man though hardworking. Have you known him long?" Sam shrugged. 3 years since I came to the territory. I helped him with his barn raising." "And what brought you here, Sam? If I may ask." The question was innocent enough, but Sam's expression closed. "Looking for a fresh start, like most folks out here." Eliza nodded, not pressing further, and they continued their descent toward the valley. The trail narrowed as they entered a wooded area, forcing them to ride single file. Sam led the way, his senses alert as always, which is why the sound, a faint crack of brush, made him halt immediately, hand moving to his revolver. "What is it?" Eliza whispered, catching his tension. Before Sam could answer, 3 riders emerged from the trees ahead, blocking the trail, rough-looking men, unshaven and trail-worn, with the hard eyes of those who lived outside the law. "Well now, what have we here?" The leader, a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, grinned unpleasantly. "Bit off the main trail, ain't you folks?" "Just passing through," Sam kept his voice neutral, his hand near his gun. "With such pretty company too," the scarred man's gaze fixed on Eliza, "don't often see ladies in these parts." Sam shifted slightly, positioning himself between Eliza and the men. "We're expected at Carson's place. People know where we are." The leader laughed. "Old Carson, that won't help you much." His hand rested on his own holster. "Empty your pockets, cowboy, the lady too, then maybe we let you continue your journey." Sam assessed their situation rapidly. 3 against 1 with Eliza to protect. Poor odds in a direct confrontation. "Take my money if you want," he said evenly. "The lady has nothing worth stealing." "We'll be the judge of that," said one of the other men, a wiry fellow with a missing front tooth. "Might be she's got hidden valuables." Sam felt Eliza stiffen behind him but kept his focus on the leader. "Touch her and you're dead." Tension crackled between them until the scarred man suddenly laughed. "Got spirit, I'll give you that. Tell you what, toss over your cash and that fine colt and we'll call it square." Sam weighed his options. Surrendering his weapon meant leaving them defenseless, but resistance meant certain violence. Before he could decide, Eliza spoke. "Perhaps these gentlemen would prefer this instead." Her voice was surprisingly steady as she removed a small gold locket from around her neck. "It was my mother's, it should fetch a good price." The gesture caught everyone off guard. The leader's eyes narrowed, assessing the glinting jewelry. "Toss it here then." Eliza hesitated, then threw the locket. As the leader reached to catch it, Sam saw his opening. In one fluid motion, he drew and fired, shooting the gun from the scarred man's holster. The leader howled, clutching his hand as his companions scrambled for their weapons. "Eliza, run!" Sam shouted, firing again at the second outlaw. Chaos erupted. Horses reared, men shouted, and gunshots echoed through the trees. Sam felt a bullet graze his shoulder but kept firing, determined to buy Eliza time to escape. To his shock, she hadn't fled but had pulled a small derringer from her bag and was aiming at the third outlaw. "Behind you," she called, and Sam ducked just as she fired. The wiry man who'd been circling behind dropped his knife with a curse. The brief, fierce gunfight ended as quickly as it began. Two outlaws wounded, the third seeing the tide turn, hauling his companions onto their horses and retreating into the trees with shouted threats. In the sudden silence, Sam turned to Eliza, astonishment overtaking his pain. "You shot him." "I aimed for his arm," she said, the small gun still clutched in trembling hands. "I didn't want to kill anyone." "Where did you?" "My father believed women should know how to protect themselves." She lowered the derringer, her composure finally cracking. "Are you badly hurt?" Sam examined his shoulder. "Just grazed, I'll live." He stared at her with new eyes. "You didn't run." "You were outnumbered." She stated this simply, as if standing her ground in a gunfight was the only reasonable choice. For the first time in years, Samuel Porter felt something crack in the careful wall he'd built around himself. This slip of a woman whom the town pitied and whispered about had shown more courage than most men he knew. "We should go," he said gruffly, reloading his Colt. "They might come back with friends." Eliza nodded, tucking the derringer away and retrieving her locket from where it had fallen. They rode hard for the next hour, Sam ignoring the throbbing in his shoulder until Carson's homestead came into view. As they approached, Sam noticed the cabin's chimney remained smokeless. Strange for late afternoon when most would be preparing supper. A sense of unease grew as they neared the silent buildings. "Wait here," he told Eliza, dismounting and drawing his revolver again. The cabin door stood partially open. Sam approached cautiously, calling out, "Carson, it's Porter with your niece." Silence answered him. Inside, the cabin was neat but clearly uninhabited for some time. A thin layer of dust covered the table. In the bedroom, the bed was made, but an empty medicine bottle sat on the nightstand. Sam returned to Eliza, his expression grave. "He's not here, doesn't look like he has been for days." "But the Reverend said he was ill." "He was," came a new voice. They turned to see an older woman approaching on horseback, Martha Winters, whose homestead bordered Carson's property. "Thomas Carson passed 3 days ago," Mrs. Winters said gently. "Pneumonia took him in the end." "Reverend Clark conducted the service yesterday." She looked at Eliza with pity. "You must be his niece. I'm sorry, child." Eliza swayed slightly in her saddle, her face draining of color. "I see," she said faintly. "Why wasn't I told?" Sam demanded. Mrs. Winters sighed. "Messenger was sent to town this morning, must have missed you." She hesitated. "There's something else. Thomas knew he was failing. He signed over this property to settle debts with the bank. They'll be taking possession at month's end." The implications hit Sam immediately. Eliza had traveled across the country to a relative who was now dead in a home that no longer existed. "What will happen to Miss Turner?" he asked. Mrs. Winters' expression grew uncomfortable. "Well, the Reverend mentioned the widow Jenkins might need help with her boarding house in town. Room and board in exchange for work, perhaps." The look of quiet devastation on Eliza's face made Sam's chest ache strangely. He'd seen that expression before on his own face years ago when he'd realized he had nowhere to go and no one who cared if he lived or died. "She'll stay with me tonight," he heard himself say. "We can figure things out in the morning." Both women looked at him in surprise. "That's hardly appropriate," Mrs. Winters began. "Neither is leaving her without options," Sam countered. He turned to Eliza. "My place isn't far. You can have the cabin, I'll sleep in the barn, just until we sort this out." Eliza studied him, those amber eyes searching his face. "Thank you," she finally said. "I accept." "Mrs." Winters clearly disapproved but seemed to recognize the limited alternatives. "I'll inform Reverend Clark where to find you then," she said stiffly before riding away. Twilight was falling as they reached Sam's ranch, a modest affair with a well-built cabin, small barn, and corral where several horses grazed. A cattle dog bounded out to greet them, circling excitedly. "This is Rex," Sam introduced as he helped Eliza dismount. "He's friendly enough once he knows you." Eliza bent to let the dog sniff her hand, then gently scratched behind his ears. "Hello, Rex." The dog promptly flopped onto his back for a belly rub, making her smile despite everything. Inside, the cabin was spare but clean, a main room with a stone fireplace, table, and 2 chairs, a small bedroom visible through an open door. Sam moved efficiently, lighting lamps and building a fire. "It's not much," he said, suddenly self-conscious about the simplicity. "It's lovely," Eliza replied, and something in her tone convinced him she meant it. "You built this yourself." Sam nodded. "Took almost a year. Started with just the barn, lived in there until the cabin was ready." He busied himself preparing a simple meal, beans, bacon, and biscuits left from breakfast. Eliza insisted on helping, moving around his small kitchen with unexpected competence. They ate mostly in silence, the events of the day weighing heavily between them. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. "I meant what I said. You take the cabin tonight, we'll ride to town tomorrow, see what the Reverend suggests." "You've already done far more than your obligation required," Eliza said quietly. "I won't impose further." "It's not an imposition." She studied him, her expression troubled. "People will talk, you know, helping me. It could affect your reputation." "Don't much care what people say." "You should." Her fingers traced the edge of her plate. "You don't know anything about me, Sam, about why I came west." The opening was clear. Sam hesitated, then asked the question that had lingered since they'd met. "What happened back east, Eliza? What's this history everyone seems to know but me?" She was silent so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, straightening her shoulders, she met his gaze directly. "I was engaged to be married in Philadelphia. My fiancé was from a prominent family. We'd known each other since childhood." Her voice was detached, as if telling someone else's story. "3 days before our wedding, a woman came forward claiming he'd fathered her child. There was evidence, letters." He denied everything, of course. Sam listened, understanding beginning to dawn. His family closed ranks, called the woman a fortune hunter, me a fool. Eliza's fingers tightened around her cup. "Then my parents died in the fire. With them gone, the rumors grew worse. I was accused of having known about his indiscretions, of marrying for money despite knowing his character. The scandal was considerable." "So you came west?" She nodded. "My uncle was my only living relative. I wrote to him and he sent money for passage. I thought I could start fresh where no one knew me." A bitter smile touched her lips. "But it seems reputations travel faster than stagecoaches." Sam absorbed this, anger building toward the town gossips who judged her so quickly. "None of that was your doing." "It doesn't matter. A woman associated with scandal, regardless of her innocence, is damaged goods." She said this matter-of-factly. "I've accepted that my prospects are limited." "That's horse shit," Sam said bluntly. Eliza blinked, then unexpectedly laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "Perhaps, but it's the reality I live with." Sam found himself wanting to hear that laugh again. Instead, he stood abruptly. "You should rest, take the bed. There's water for washing up." "Thank you." She caught his hand as he turned to leave. "Truly, Sam, for everything today." Her touch sent an unexpected warmth through him. "Get some sleep, Eliza." In the barn, settling into the hay with only a blanket, Sam stared at the rafters. The woman sleeping in his cabin had upended every expectation he'd had, brave enough to stand her ground in a gunfight. Practical enough to use her mother's locket as a distraction, resilient enough to travel alone across the country after losing everything. For the first time in years, Sam thought about his own journey west. After losing his parents and younger sister to typhoid, he'd fled Tennessee, unable to bear the emptiness of their family home. He'd drifted, hardened himself, built walls, convinced himself that isolation was protection. Yet today, watching Eliza face down outlaws and then receive news of her uncle's death with quiet dignity, he'd felt something shift inside him. A recognition, perhaps, a mirror. Morning found Sam awake early, tending his stock before Eliza emerged from the cabin. When she appeared, she'd somehow refreshed her traveling dress and arranged her hair neatly, though he noticed dark circles beneath her eyes. "I made coffee," she offered, holding out a steaming cup. They shared a simple breakfast, discussing practical matters. The Reverend would need to be informed of their return. Eliza's options were few, the boarding house position misses. Winters had mentioned or perhaps domestic work in one of the larger ranches. "I won't be a burden," she said firmly. "I can work, I'm stronger than I look." Sam believed her. Let's see what the Reverend suggests before deciding anything. They were preparing to leave when hoofbeats announced visitors. Sam stepped outside, hand instinctively near his gun, to find Reverend Clark himself accompanied by the town's sheriff. "Porter," the sheriff nodded, "Miss Turner inside." "What's this about?" Sam asked, instantly wary. The Reverend dismounted stiffly. "We received concerning news. Mrs. Winters said you insisted on bringing Miss Turner here rather than to town." Before Sam could respond, Eliza appeared in the doorway. "Reverend Clark, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Porter has been a perfect gentleman. My uncle's death left me without immediate options and he offered shelter for the night." The sheriff relaxed slightly, but the minister's expression remained troubled. "Even so, Miss Turner, a young woman staying unchaperoned with a bachelor, you must see how this appears." "I slept in the barn," Sam said flatly. "Regardless, it's most irregular," the Reverend straightened. "I've come to offer a solution. Widow Jenkins has agreed to take you in at her boarding house. You can assist with cleaning and cooking in exchange for room and board until a more permanent arrangement can be made." Eliza's face revealed nothing of her thoughts. "That's very kind, Reverend. We should leave immediately," he continued, to minimize talk. Sam watched Eliza's profile, noting the slight tightening of her jaw, the only indication of her feelings. "Don't you think Miss Turner deserves time to consider her options?" he asked. "What options?" the sheriff asked bluntly. "She's alone, without means or connections. Widow Jenkins is offering Christian charity." "I could stay here," Eliza said quietly. Three male heads turned toward her in varying degrees of shock. "That would be entirely inappropriate," the Reverend sputtered. "I could work," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "I know horses, I can cook, clean, tend a garden. Mr. Porter's ranch could use a woman's touch." Sam stared at her, speechless. "Miss Turner," the Reverend said sternly, "perhaps grief has affected your judgment. A respectable woman does not propose living with an unmarried man, regardless of the arrangement." "Unless they were married," Sam heard himself say. Now everyone stared at him. "Are you suggesting?" the sheriff began. "Yes," Sam interrupted, surprising himself more than anyone. He turned to Eliza. "It would be a practical arrangement. You need a home." "I need help with the ranch." "Samuel Porter, if this is some kind of jest," the Reverend began. "It's not." Sam kept his eyes on Eliza, whose expression had gone completely still. "What do you say, Miss Turner? Would you consider a marriage of convenience?" The silence that followed seemed endless. Eliza's amber eyes searched his, looking for deception or mockery. Finding neither, she spoke carefully. "You barely know me." "I know enough. People will talk. They already do about me. Let them." Another long silence, then almost imperceptibly she nodded. "If you're certain, yes." The Reverend looked between them, clearly flummoxed by this turn of events. "This is most irregular. There should be bans posted, proper courtship." "With respect, Reverend," Sam said, "Miss Turner has no family to consult, and neither do I. We're both of age. Can you perform the ceremony today?" Well, technically yes, but..." "Then it's settled," Sam turned to Eliza again. "Unless you've changed your mind." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I haven't." The ceremony took place that afternoon in Virginia City's small church. Word spread quickly, drawing curious onlookers who whispered behind their hands as Sam and Eliza exchanged simple vows. She wore her blue traveling dress freshly pressed. He had donned his only good shirt and a clean bandana. Neither had a ring to offer, so Sam improvised with a small gold band he'd purchased hastily from the general store. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the Reverend finally declared, his tone suggesting he still had reservations about the entire affair. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Eliza Turner became Eliza Porter with those words, her slender hand steady in Sam's larger one. When he bent to kiss her, a brief, chaste touch of lips that nevertheless sent an unexpected jolt through him, her eyes held a question he couldn't quite decipher. The ride back to the ranch passed mostly in silence. Sam kept glancing at his new wife, wondering if she regretted her impulsive decision. For his part, he was still trying to understand what had possessed him to propose such an arrangement. "You can still change your mind," he finally said as they approached the cabin. "We could have the marriage annulled. I won't hold you to this if you're having second thoughts." Eliza studied the landscape before answering. "Are you having second thoughts, Sam?" "No," he admitted, "but I want you to be sure." "I've had precious few choices in my life recently," she said quietly. "This one, at least, was mine to make." She turned to him with unexpected directness. "I should be clear about something, though. I expect a true marriage in time, not just a business arrangement." Sam nearly pulled Buck to a stop in surprise. "You mean?" "I mean," she continued steadily, "that while I understand this began as convenience, I won't live half a life, Sam. I want a real marriage, children someday perhaps. If that's not what you want, tell me now." The directness of her statement caught him completely off guard. He studied her face, determined, vulnerable, but unashamed of expressing her desires. "I haven't thought that far ahead," he admitted, "but I wouldn't have suggested marriage if I couldn't see that possibility." Something in her expression softened. "Then we understand each other." The first weeks of their marriage established a routine. Sam showed Eliza the workings of the ranch, the cattle grazing the north pasture, the small vegetable garden he'd neglected, the chickens that provided eggs. She took to ranch life with surprising adaptability, rising early and working alongside him without complaint. They slept separately at first, Sam insisting on taking the barn while Eliza used the cabin. But as spring warmed into summer, the arrangement began to feel increasingly artificial. They were husband and wife in name, working side by side during daylight hours, then parting at night as if they were strangers. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch after supper watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in gold and crimson, Sam finally broached the subject. "This arrangement, it's not what you wanted." Eliza set down her coffee cup. "What makes you say that?" "You said you wanted a real marriage. This isn't that. We've barely known each other 2 months, Sam." Still, he struggled to articulate his thoughts. "It feels wrong, me sleeping in the barn when there's a perfectly good cabin with room for both of us." Eliza studied him in the fading light. "Are you suggesting we share the bedroom?" "I'm suggesting we stop pretending we're just business partners." He took a breath. "I respect you, Eliza. I won't rush anything you're not ready for, but I'd like the chance to build something real between us." For a moment she was silent. Then quietly, "I'd like that too." That night Sam moved his few possessions back into the cabin. They shared the bedroom with careful courtesy, Sam building a pallet on the floor beside the bed, Eliza wearing her modest nightdress with her hair in a single braid down her back. It was awkward, unfamiliar, yet somehow right. Over the following weeks their relationship slowly evolved. Sam found himself noticing things about Eliza he'd overlooked before, the way she hummed softly while working in the garden, how she'd befriended the most ill-tempered hen in the coop, the small smile that appeared when she thought no one was watching. For her part, Eliza seemed to relax gradually in his presence, her natural intelligence and quiet humor emerging more frequently. Summer brought new challenges as they worked to expand the garden and prepare for haying season. Sam hired 2 local boys to help with the heavier work, and Eliza proved herself an excellent cook, feeding the small crew with skill that earned their immediate respect. One blazing July afternoon, Sam returned from checking fence lines to find Eliza kneeling in the garden, her sleeves rolled up and dirt smudging her cheek as she harvested the first ripe tomatoes. The sight struck him with unexpected force, his wife, building a life on his land, thriving despite everything she'd endured. That night, when they retired to the bedroom, Sam didn't make his usual pallet on the floor. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching as Eliza braided her hair. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, her hands stilled. Slowly, she turned to face him, eyes wide in the lamplight. "You don't have to say anything," he continued. "I just wanted you to know. This stopped being a marriage of convenience for me some time ago." Eliza moved to sit beside him, her shoulder touching his. "When did it change?" Sam considered this. "Maybe the moment you pulled that derringer from your bag. Or when you faced down the Reverend without flinching. Or yesterday when you threatened that ornery bull with a broom." She laughed softly. He was eating the laundry. He outweighs you 10 times over. He looked very repentant afterward. Their eyes met and something shifted between them. Sam reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "May I kiss you, Eliza, as a husband kisses his wife?" In answer, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss began tentatively, then deepened as Sam pulled her closer. When they finally separated, both breathing quickly, Eliza's cheeks were flushed and Sam felt lightheaded. "I think I've been falling in love with you since you offered me jerky on the trail and didn't once complain about the taste," she whispered. That night they truly became husband and wife, discovering each other with tenderness and growing passion. Afterward, as Eliza lay curled against his side, her head on his chest, Sam felt a sense of completeness he'd never experienced before. "Tell me about before," she murmured sleepily, "about what brought you west." Sam tensed slightly. He rarely spoke of his past, but in the darkness, with Eliza's warmth against him, the words finally came. "I had a family in Tennessee, parents, younger sister named Sarah, good land, decent life." His voice grew rough. "Typhoid came through in '69, took all three within a week." Eliza's arm tightened around him. "I'm so sorry, Sam. I couldn't stay. Every corner of that farm held memories." He swallowed hard. "I sold everything, headed west. Convinced myself I was better off alone. That caring for people only led to pain." "And now?" she asked softly. Sam's hand traced the curve of her shoulder. "Now I'm thinking maybe the pain is worth risking for this." As summer faded into fall, Sam and Eliza's relationship deepened. The townspeople gradually accepted their unusual marriage, particularly as it became obvious that genuine affection had developed between them. Eliza's reputation, once the subject of whispers, faded into irrelevance as she proved herself a capable rancher's wife and a good neighbor, always ready to help in times of need. In October, the outlaws who had attacked them on the trail were finally captured after robbing a stagecoach. At the sheriff's request, Sam and Eliza traveled to Virginia City to identify them. The scarred leader spat when he saw them together. "Should have killed you when I had the chance, Porter." Sam merely tightened his arm around Eliza's waist. "You should have ridden in the opposite direction." As they left the jail, Reverend Clark approached them, his expression thoughtful. "I owe you both an apology," he said. "I feared your hasty marriage would end poorly. I'm glad to have been proven wrong." "Thank you, Reverend," Eliza responded graciously. "Will you be staying in the territory? I understand Carson's old place has been purchased by newcomers from Kansas." Sam exchanged a glance with Eliza. "We're staying, planning to expand the herd next spring." What Sam didn't mention was their other plans. Just that morning, Eliza had confirmed what they'd both suspected for several weeks. She was expecting their first child, due in late spring. That evening, as they sat by the fire in their cabin, no longer just Sam's but truly theirs, he watched his wife sewing baby clothes from fabric they'd purchased in town. "Are you happy, Eliza," he asked suddenly, "with this life with me?" She set down her sewing, considering the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "When I came west, I expected at best a quiet existence with an elderly uncle. At worst, a life of drudgery and whispers." Her hand drifted to her still flat stomach. "I never expected to find love or to build a family of my own." "Is that a yes?" Sam teased gently. Eliza rose and settled herself in his lap, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "It's more than a yes, it's gratitude, for the man who saw value in the girl no one wanted." Sam brushed his lips against her forehead. They were all blind. "And I was the fortunate one." As winter settled over Montana territory, the Porter Ranch stood as a testament to unexpected beginnings and second chances. Inside the sturdy cabin, a fire burned warm against the cold, while two people who had once believed themselves destined for solitude prepared for the future together.